So, the whole point of this was to start from here and tell the story that is basically my own story. I tried to give the SNP some heads up when they were putting male offenders into the women's estate. And so I'm having problems with my page display, by the way, and getting it come into the screen. There we go. So this guy is called Dr. Elliot Barker, and this was one of his patients. I'm only going to refer, as is the case with a lot of these cases, and please excuse me with my soother because my throat's still a bit sore. David Michael Kruger. I'm going to refer to this guy. They use a picture of this person when he was a child because he committed these crimes when he was a child, but this is what he is and this is what he looks like. So, this is my stepfather's cellmate. I really don't care, much about the man. It's just to show you how, I guess that's the book that stepfather Thomas Buck had passed me a link and told me it's all in this book about me. Well, he was in Oak Ridge facility and he was a patient of Dr. Barker's. And his fellow LSD heads who were experimenting on people. And I put talented Mr. Ripley is a picture that will come up if you Google Peter Woodcock, which I don't very often. I'm telling my story so that other people can't tell it for me. And this is part of what happened to me when I was 10, was that this guy was released into our care. He wasn't as clever as Kruger. A lot of the people that ended up being there weren't treated as well as Kruger was, and hardly any of them were released back into the public. One was a Scottish soldier, and the other was a Scottish murderer. I know that there was other people who were released as successfully treated and released back into the public. One of them was my stepfather. And in order to, really show people that this has been something that's been very much downplayed, what happened here, and that people, have got this obsession with true crime and the privilege that, the luxury of those that haven't been affected by people like this in real life astounds me. But what concerns me is the fact that they use this as a entertainment genre now, thanks to people like Simon Cowell and his pals, like Max Clifford, who used to make an absolute fortune for the victims in their stories, along with the press and the police, certain. The Levinson inquiry. If you don't believe me, have a look at the Levinson inquiry cover-up and you'll see some journalists and some police officers don't the government, they don't try to help victims and survivors, you know. A lot of the time they're trying to utilise broken people so that they can commodify us in their armies. Oh God, I sound like a conspiracy theorist. But you know, I don't understand. But one of Elliot Barker's patients, you know, left the facility and became a decorated war hero. Is all I'm going to say about that. Now, I wanted to have a wee quick look about this. This type of person here.
Like, what went down there? Like, what?
Right. Paranormal t-shirt, right?
Hey guys.
Obviously monetised their channel. Look, I'm not here to have a go at you, right? Whatever people want to do. But I'm just commenting on the fact that you're putting, you know, you're part of a sort of movement with the paranormal crew online. And I was just talking about a TV psychic, Martin Smith, and he used to be on Most Haunted. Yeah, he's in that episode of Most Haunted. Martin Smith. So you say, well, who's Martin Smith? Well, he was going out with a woman that was, you know, she was in Cumbrian Child Services, and it turned out he was a paedophile. He was a convicted paedophile, and we found out about him because Brian Gerrish was claiming that he wasn't a convicted paedophile. So, yeah, that was Martin Smith. So, when we come into this whole genre, when the people that run after apparitions online, listen guys, I don't share your belief system, and so I don't look at it. I don't have this I don't have this hobby, and I don't get this.
I just wanted to give you a disclaimer that this video contains very graphic and disturbing content.
And I think that's why a lot of you
that happened, all this torture and all this abuse, just kind of like,
See, it's not funny. Like, this is what happened. But, you know, the Dr. Elliot Barker had convinced murderers and rapists and psychopaths, like my stepfather, that they were therapists, and they handcuffed women who had the menopause or who had postnatal depression, who were in there for those reasons. They were sent down into the time pod with these guys, and what happened in the time pod was beyond what anybody can describe. I can't read all the details about this. I can only skim the surface, and you know, I know what the basics are, and I know that the patients, right, that hadn't really committed any serious crimes or done anything wrong, the fact that they had been called mental patients was used to justify this torture of them, and they've just been recently compensated. And the families that some of these people were released to, right, the dangerous ones, a lot of us were hurt by these men who were really clever, talented Mr. Ripleys. So this is all I'm trying to say. You know, what was happening, they took psychopaths and they pumped them full of LSD. That's just one of the things that happened in the time capsule, and I don't like getting into it all. But I suppose this is what we need to do, is talk about, you know, this kind of torture by the state and the Crown. The other thing was, I tried to warn the SNP that what happened here, right, was happening in the NHS to disabled people who needed same-sex care, and that something else was happening when they put men like Adam Graham into the women's estate and then laugh and say, oh, you'll never have been allowed anywhere near women. They're in the women's estate. If you listen to the testimony of the women who were in prison, I'll tell you what, I'd rather listen to the women that were in prison with these people and who have been raped by some of them than listen to some yahoo on the internet for Edinburgh that's never lived his life and is living a life of middle class privilege looking for victimhood and first world problems to moan about. Because here we have people who were actually suffering, right? And the inhumanity that's been shown towards women is happening in Canada there, is happening here in Scotland again. And under the guise of the white coat, we've got another lobotomy procedure being justified. And the implications are that there's going to be litigation that comes. So, you know, I said this to the SNP about when they never contested self-ID, gender recognition, medicalising young people, sterilising them with hormone blockers. I mean, what part of genocide in a generation and causing them to be sterile do we not get? Like, I'm not going to go, what I'm saying is, it's few ethnicities and peoples that have got living memories of genocide. And the Irish people, it's not too far back enough for us to have forgotten. Some people might say that, you know, this kind of suffering can psychologically destroy a nation of people. So we talk about these things that people don't want to talk about, and we talk about Oak Ridge, and this lass is, you know, doing a true crime genre video. I'm not condemning her, let do your thing, right, honestly, but can you just try and take into consideration that there's real people in their real lives and feelings and years of pain that are fueling the clicks and the likes on your channels, you know. And I'm not taking you personally as that, but what I do know is that there's people like Sean Atwood and other YouTuber gangster guys who I see as worse because they actually glorify these gangsters and these predators for clicks and likes, you know. This is what real gangsters do to people, I suppose. They find an environment where they can act at their pathology on people.
So, just sharing. I took a drive one night because I wanted to do a paranormal investigation at the...
She was wanting to find something, right? I believe, right? Every, you know, like people say, oh, we all like being scared, but I don't, right? Personally, I like a good thriller and I like, you know, whatever. But I'm not somebody that seeks out the horror genre. I can't stand it. It makes me feel dead annoyed. And sort of gangster genre is the same because it's like, I understand people's lives getting reflected back to them and all that, but the glorification of the gangster has been one of your biggest self-sabotaging exercises. You know, the glorification of the bad guy, you know. Don't I sound like an old grumpy woman, but you know.
St. Thomas Asylum. When I drove up, there was this newly built hospital. I remember looking out the passenger window and there was a nurse there that was on her break, obviously, and she's having a cigarette. And I asked her, are those buildings that I see in the distance, are those the buildings that make up St. Thomas? She's like, don't even try it. Security will be on you in like 2 minutes and then they're going to call the police. And I was like, oh, shit. So I was like, okay, well, thank you for your time. And then she out of random, she's like, oh, I used to work there. And that hospital was better than this hospital. And then she adds, my mom worked there too, and that hospital was great. Wow. I have already done my research. I have already looked into this place, and the So, like, the shit that went down is the reason I'm here to investigate.
Yeah.
You guys are probably wondering why I'm so invested in this topic. Well, to be quite honest, it rocks me to my core, because as an epileptic, I would be one of those patients. I would literally, I would be in there.
Exactly.
Dubbed as the,
And she's making the point that I'm trying to make to the SNP, that what they're doing to people under the guise of, you could say anybody was like mentally ill and put them in there, say just because they had postnatal depression or the menopause,
okay,
for instance, or epilepsy.
This was actually the maximum security forensic building, and, well, healthcare center, sorry. The cell blocks at Oak Ridge housed.
So she's done a deep dive.
When I cured these patients, really taking them on a trip.
More idealistic than I am now, in the sense that I thought what we were doing in the earliest years really was going to fix psychopaths, fix patients, that we were going to just develop the best program in the world. And
so you were a narcissist with delusions of grandeur, who had just got back from India and thought that you were going to be the cure. And what you done to people had an impact on lives that you'll never even know about. And so I'm one of them. And, you know, I think this story there needs to be more of a spotlight on what happened here.
His patients were going to get better.
There's so many lessons to learn.
When Dr. Barker got to Oak Ridge, he invested his time in the social therapy unit. What is the social therapy unit? It was a program made up of group psychotherapy sessions, committees, and council meetings. The psychotherapy sessions began to become compulsory. So much so that, Mark doesn't want to come? No? Oh, okay, so tie him up. Just tie up his legs.
What actually happened was, it was a form of coercive control. It was a MK Ultra experiment in mind control and how to control human beings. What would happen when you put them under the control of, say, their absolute worst nightmare, Freddy Krueger type character, who were there in their bucket loads, who were getting pumped full of LSD, and who were allowed to pump other people full of LSD with impunity for a good while, up until recently, you know.
Between 1963 and 1977, half of the patients on E, F, G, and H ward participated in a therapeutic community model where patients decided on treatments for other patients.
And that's what I was just referring to, was that Barker had convinced these star patients like my stepfather that they were somehow qualified therapists who were qualified to prescribe. And some of the drugs that they were given to people, like that truth drug, I don't want to go into describing it all here, because there's, I just prefer that people who are listening would go and just do their own research into the case, because there's no words that I can convey this horror story to anyone that we've lived it. This lassie has got empathy enough, to understand that she had epilepsy, therefore at the time she would have been seen as someone who was mentally ill. Just like ME patients are being persecuted at the minute and sectioned and experimented on. And just like I see that children cannot consent to taking puberty blockers. And the medical community are performing crimes on the public, and we're dehumanised by the public. We're a collection of individuals with feelings and souls and lives, and we don't seem to be seen that way through the eye of the medical community. I wonder what happens to them when they're in their training. They dehumanise people. You know, I've got all the compassion in the world for someone that has to sit and listen to people's problems all day. It can't be easy being a doctor or being in the police or being a therapist. None of these jobs are easy. My God, and how does it show us that we're actually short on empathy? And people who come to the caring professions without caring, actually. And if you do get carers who actually really care, I've heard NHS workers tell me they get put, they get managed out just the same way as the behaviour was being controlled here. The community structure is set up in such a way to shame and condemn the individual that isn't complying. And we do see that, Mr. Ayres, right? If you're listening. But a fascination with the macabre.
So many levels of wrong.
So, I don't,
We think the patients have really very great advantages as therapists for each other.
Dr. Parker.
He's really coming off the moral rearmament model that turned into the Alcoholics Anonymous programme. The patients run the asylum. The so-called ill people were helping the other ill people. And, some middle class, privileged dude just back from India thought that this was a good model. Well, there was LSD playing a part in Bill Wilson's model as well. He had been given LSD, belladonna, all sorts of mind-altering substances when he came up with his epiphany, along with Mr. Buchman and others of the moral rearmament programme. Now, Glenn Close was a victim, and she was, I'll say trafficked, I hate that word. She was forced to be part of a cult when she was a child, and it was the moral rearmament cult that actually turned into Alcoholics Anonymous. It really is, a way of social engineering, and what people call MK Ultra, which to me just sort of put me off even looking at what they were talking about. What does that mean? Mind control, Jose Silva. I really wasn't interested in any of these things. I just had to sort of find these things out because this guy had affected my life. And so I think other people should know about it just for educational and awareness purposes. I don't want to entertain anybody with my story here. That's not what it's here for. Although, that is what these people are doing with this as a genre, a true crime genre. I don't want to condemn anybody or, be a negative Nelly. But I'm just asking people to consider that there's real people. I understand that a lot of families and stuff, come to the media and they, they want a lot, they want to speak to the media and that's fine. It's how the media handle victims, it's how we're portrayed, it's how we're seen as entertainment. I think it's quite dangerous. Why? Because if it's not informing people for educational purposes and it's only entertaining, then when you're someone who understands a criminal mind, you understand how it can develop. And maybe one of the ways that these guys can dehumanise people is to see their crimes as entertainment. One of the ways that sexual sadists and psychopaths and wannabe murderers, trainee rapists, you'll find them in BDSM clubs. Because a lot of that is just, acting it out. As John Douglas would say, practising. And that is the way serial killers speak. Funnily enough, it's also the way some of the Masonic Orange Order brothers in Glasgow speak about how they take 14-year-old girls and use these mind control methods on them. And they call it practicing. You know, like, who are you, son of Sam or something? You know, what is it you're trying to, are you going to be BTK? What is it that you're practicing to be? A great deceiver? Oh, well done. You must feel really fulfilled in your life. If that gives you kicks, you know, you should just try and, like, be somewhere where, like, the rest is protected from you. I don't want to see you being, you know, allowed to go and perpetuate your crimes on everybody else. And I'm not one of these people that want to torture you either. I've not got any inclination. I'm more steering towards the old indifference so that we can all get to a point where we don't even have to think about you. You know, and that you're not infiltrating communities under the guise of good men, using charity and good works in order to hide your deviance behind. That you obviously put a gun to other people's heads and make them act it out so that you can feel better about yourself. You know, we've got your MO down, right? But those of us that don't practice deceit like that, we don't know who you are and you don't know who we are, right? Tom will never know what it's like to feel the feelings that people like me feel. That's why he was addicted to creating